You don't get it, Claire. If you build it here, we own it. That's what legal said. Not in a metaphorical, vague, corporate gaslight kind of way. No, he leaned across the conference table, index finger tapping the NDA like he was flipping a damn card in Uno. Company time equals company IP, he added, in that smug tone that HR reps and parking enforcement officers must practice in front of the mirror. And just like that, months of work, dozens of whiteboard sessions, and a sleek architecture draft that could have pulled their clunky systems into the 21st century, reduced to legal mulch. Claire blinked. Once, twice. Her throat tightened, but her jaw didn't flinch. She was too stunned to speak, like someone who just watched their lottery ticket get eaten by a goat. The worst part? She wasn't even surprised. She'd walked into that planning session armed with optimism, polished modular back-end framework proposal, and 3 Red Bulls worth of nerves. The framework wasn't just a technical enhancement, it was a lifeboat strapped to a sinking oil tanker. It would have replaced their brittle spaghetti code legacy stack with an adaptive engine that could scale, pivot, and breathe. But all they heard was, blah blah tech stuff, she's talking again. Her boss, the king of buzzwords and barely functional Excel sheets, chuckled like someone had just farted in a church pew. Claire, we appreciate the enthusiasm, he said, like she was a toddler who tried to microwave soup in a foil can. But legal's right. Let's not go reinventing the wheel. And then Chad, the junior PM who still thought Kubernetes was a Greek island, raised his hand. So, what if we just took some of Claire's ideas, but made it, more agile? He didn't even flinch as he said it, just smiled and tapped his gel pen against his vape-stained notepad. And that was the moment. That's when she knew, not just that they were going to steal it, but that they weren't even smart enough to do it well. By the way, if you're still reading this and thinking, damn, Claire got done dirty, you're not wrong. And hey, I've got a small ask. I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers. If you like stories where arrogant suits get their comeuppance, and the underdog fights back with code, contracts, or chaos, hit that subscribe button. You'd be helping someone way more real than those boardroom clowns. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, Claire sat frozen. The kind of freeze that isn't fear, it's calculation. She looked at Chad, then at her boss, then at the legal drone who hadn't written a single line of code in his life. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. Smile, tight-lipped, neutral, unreadable, didn't so much as twitch. Because deep down, past the insult, past the office fluorescence and lukewarm coffee was a secret. They hadn't seen the real framework. This wasn't just about stolen credit. It was about wasted potential, potential she hadn't handed over. The version she pitched was a stripped-down schematic. An outline, a decoy, the real thing, that lived on her personal laptop. Polished, documented, with version control tied to her own GitLab, time-stamped weekend commits. No company VPN, no office Wi-Fi, no fingerprints they could claim. It was built between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. with lo-fi beats and frozen lasagna. Written while the company slept. While Chad posted Jim's selfies captioned grind mode. While legal drafted the same 4 paragraphs of boilerplate IP nonsense they cut and pasted into every contract. They thought they'd outmaneuvered her. But Claire didn't fight it, didn't push back, didn't say a damn word. She let the meeting end. Let Chad bumble through his half-baked jargon about synergies and cloud-first thinking. Let her boss nod like a bobblehead who thought he was Steve Jobs in a Men's Warehouse suit. Then she went back to her desk, opened a new tab, and pulled up an old contact. A CTO at a rival firm. Someone who listened. Someone who had once told her, if you ever build something real, give me a call. Her cursor hovered over the send button, and she smiled. Not the tight, polite office smile. A real one. The kind that tasted like revenge and release. Because sometimes the best way to win is to let them think they already beat you. The code came alive at 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday, same as always. Claire's apartment hummed with the low whir of her overworked fan, faint crackle of a dying candle that smelled like expired optimism, vanilla soothe, from a clearance rack she regretted even as she lit it. Her hair was up, sweatpants rolled to the knee, and the only witness to her genius was a cold almond latte she kept forgetting to drink. This was her temple, not the cubicle under fluorescent oppression, but this tiny 2-bedroom where she could build without explaining, where she could write something powerful without some jackass asking, will this integrate with our existing ticketing system? As if duct taping another API call to their Frankenstein stack was a sign of innovation. She didn't just write code. She architected it, graceful, modular scaffolds that breathed on their own. The kind of thing you dream of when you've spent 5 years babysitting systems built by interns who thought commenting was optional. Each function was a whisper of clarity, each class a self-contained organism that knew how to scale, fail gracefully, and recover. It was elegant, intimate, hers, and she made damn sure no one else could claim it. No office Wi-Fi, no VPN, no shared repositories. Every commit logged under her private Git lab, each entry timestamped with the late-night signature of someone whose best work happened when the world shut the hell up. She kept a versioning protocol tighter than Fort Knox. Folder hierarchy, immaculate, unit tests, a symphony of green checks. She even kept a PDF of licensing terms she was drafting, early sketches of a future where this code wouldn't belong to anyone who thought IP clause was a magic spell that turned employees into serfs. That bitterness, yeah, it lingered. She never started out cynical. Claire used to be one of them, the bright-eyed ones who thought innovation could bloom in boardrooms, who thought merit would win out, actually believed that her work would be judged on what it did, not how well she smiled through some exec's "I just don't see you as a leader" speech. But 5 years of silent theft, credit shifting, and managerial mansplaining had forged something colder. Sharper, not quite vengeance, but strategy. Her weekends were rituals. Wake at 10, toast with peanut butter, laptop by 11. Noise-canceling headphones, 3 playlists in rotation. Ambient synth for planning, lo-fi hip-hop for heavy lifting. Rage against the machine for debugging sessions that turned into war. She didn't clock in, she ascended. Hours passed in fluid waves, and when she looked up at 3 a.m. with aching wrists and dry eyes, the progress didn't feel like exhaustion. It felt like rebellion. There were nights she'd pause just to scroll job listings, not because she wanted out, but because the idea of her framework running elsewhere felt like a secret thrill. She'd imagine it live inside a lean startup or a sharp fintech team, humming under real pressure, doing in seconds what her current employer's stack couldn't do in hours without catching fire. But Claire wasn't reckless. She didn't push to GitHub. She didn't brag on dev forums or drop hints in Slack. She was a vault. She knew what they'd say if they found out. But how do we know you didn't build that on company time? So she documented everything. It's marked with location data from her home IP. Screenshots of timestamps, cross-referenced with her company badge login history, proof she wasn't anywhere near their office when brilliance struck. Even her IDE had logs. Claire was building not just a framework, but a digital alibi, because someday they would come knocking. And when they did, she wanted to bury them in receipts. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and betrayal. Claire sat third seat from the screen, notebook closed, pen idle. Across from her stood Tyler, the junior PM who once asked if Python could be compiled into Java, clicking through a PowerPoint deck like he was auctioning off a bridge he didn't build. And there it was, slide 3, modular backend, a new direction. She felt it like a slap, her architecture, her phrasing, even her damn slide format. He hadn't even changed the font from her mock-ups, except now it was all wrong, sloppy, half-baked, like someone had photocopied a blueprint and spilled Monster Energy on it. He used the word streamlined 6 times in 2 minutes. He pitched asynchronous load balancing like it was his invention. Called it Tyler's adaptive logic flow. Claire stared at that phrase for so long her vision went blurry. Not a single mention of her name, not even a nod. And the worst part, they ate it up. VP of Engineering nodded like he was witnessing the second coming. One director actually clapped. Claire watched her boss beam like a proud parent at a science fair, completely ignoring the fact that Tyler's science project was made of stolen duct tape and delusion. Her fingers curled around her pen, white-knuckled, but she didn't say a word. Not because she wasn't angry, she was seething. But rage is loud, and Claire had learned to be quiet. Quiet got you through unnoticed. Quiet gave you room to move. Quiet let you plan, so she smiled. Just a little, enough to pass. Tyler ended his presentation with a line so laughably vague it could have been printed on a coffee mug. This framework will really help us pivot into the future. He looked at her, smug, as if waiting for approval. She gave him a blank stare that said, "Congratulations on your impending failure, you fragile little sponge." Meeting adjourned. People trickled out. No one said a word to her. She walked back to her desk like a ghost, not angry anymore, something colder, something focused. She opened her laptop, navigated past the Slack pings and Sprint board clutter, and pulled up her personal email. The subject line had already written itself months ago. She'd just been waiting for the right moment to send it. Subject: Framework Opportunity NDA attached to Andrew M. at Tech Attachment. Claire Framework NDA PDF Andrew. CTO, former mentor. The one person in her orbit who didn't just understand her code, he respected it. They hadn't spoken in over a year, but Claire knew he'd remember. He always said, "You build like someone who sees 5 years ahead." And now she was 5 years ahead, staring back at a company still duct taping legacy junk into innovation. The NDA was clean, lawyer-vetted, watertight. LLC handled all the licensing. Her name never touched the paperwork unless it had to. She reread the message once, twice. Then she hit send, not out of spite, out of justice. They didn't just overlook her. They took her vision, boiled it in mediocrity, and slapped someone else's name on it like a crooked trophy. They thought silence meant surrender. But silence was strategy. And Claire was already building her exit, not her resignation. An escape route lined with leverage and licensing fees. They could keep clapping for Tyler's crumbling house of cards. She was already out the back door with the blueprints. The deal was signed on a Tuesday, in a coffee shop that reeked of toasted bagels and burnt ambition. Claire showed up in a denim jacket and zero makeup, looking like someone who had nothing to prove. Across the table sat Andrew, her old contact, now CTO at a rival firm making quiet waves in the industry. He wasn't flashy, but he didn't need to be. He was smart, well-funded, and most importantly, listened. He'd read her NDA within hours of her first email, then came a phone call, then a Zoom with his in-house counsel, then this meeting, and now the contract. "This," Andrew said, tapping a highlighted clause, "protects you. We don't touch your core. We don't own a damn line unless you want us to. Just letting us use it." Claire nodded once, calm on the outside. Inside, a thunderstorm of satisfaction. Her LLC, cleverly named, scrubbed of any ties to her real identity, would handle all licensing. She wouldn't be listed as a developer. The product would be folded into their upcoming SaaS platform under a fresh label, Stream Arc Core. Catchy enough to sell, vague enough to shield. The framework was no longer just elegant code. It was a licensed asset. Andrew, he was the first to get in the door. She slid him a USB and an encrypted file access key. "Latest build," she said, "includes the adaptive scaffolding, the predictive resource allocator, and the integrated logging interface. Clean hooks, no clutter." Andrew leaned back, smiled. "Claire, this is miles ahead of what we've seen." She shrugged. "Nights and weekends. That's when the real work gets done." He didn't ask why she hadn't gone to her current employer with it, ask about her motives. He was too smart for that. He just shook her hand, dropped the signed agreement into his leather folder, and left with the quiet confidence of a man holding a key to the future. Claire sat for a moment longer, sipping coffee that had long since gone cold. The advance wired to her LLC was generous, double what she made in 6 months at her day job. And that was just the pilot. If it passed stress testing, they'd go into full integration. More money, more control. Still hers. The satisfaction that washed over her wasn't giddy. It was slow burning, heavy. Not just revenge, it was validation. Everything they dismissed, buried, whiteboarded over with idiotic slogans, someone had finally seen it. Not just the framework, but the intention behind it. The clarity, the care. But underneath it all was a sliver of caution. Because she knew they'd notice soon. Not the licensing. Name was buried behind legal scaffolding thicker than an IRS audit. But the code, the shape of it, the speed, the efficiency. When Andrew's firm rolled out their new product and it started outperforming legacy stacks in side-by-side demos, someone at her old company would feel the resemblance. And when they did, they'd come sniffing. Claire wasn't scared. She was ready. Logs, timestamps, Git commits, IP addresses. A digital paper trail so clean it sparkled, everything built outside work hours. Every line of code hers and hers alone. She left the coffee shop with her hands in her pockets, face calm, mind humming. They thought they'd buried her under NDAs and condescension. She was about to bury them under their own complacency. The launch was quiet, no pyrotechnics, no flashy slogans. Just a press release, a product demo, and a 24-hour turnaround from "Who are these guys?" to "Holy hell, we're in trouble." Claire saw it unfold like a time-lapse thunderstorm. One day, the industry forums were their usual blend of bugs, back-end gripes, and half-baked product announcements. The next, every third post mentioned Stream Arc Core. Devs were buzzing about the speed. CTOs were sharing benchmarks. One thread simply said, "Their middleware just works." No bottlenecks, no drama. It wasn't until Thursday morning that her old company noticed the sky was falling. She knew it the moment she walked into the break room and saw her boss hunched over his phone, knuckles white, ignoring his yogurt. When a company that lives off buzzwords starts whispering, it means the buzzword dam just cracked. Claire sipped her tea, said nothing. Listened. Did you see this? Someone whispered, sliding a tablet across the table to the head of engineering. The headline glared back. Upstart disrupts SAW market with lightning-fast platform launch. There it was. Her code, not by name, but by signature. The fluidity, the scalability, the auto-configuration features that shaved hours off deployment time. All wrapped in a sleek UI someone else painted over her architecture, like a glossy coat on a titanium skeleton. And the best part, it was already absorbing their customer base like a sponge. We had that idea last quarter, her boss said, voice tight. Tyler pitched something almost identical. Claire nearly choked on her tea. Almost identical, huh? That almost being the Grand Canyon of competence. She glanced at Tyler, who looked pale, eyes darting between tabs like he could control plus see the timeline. The poor idiot had no idea why his clunky clone wasn't working. Because the bones weren't there. Because the real engine, the one Claire had built, was never inside his mess of slides and buzzwords. And now, the gap was too wide to ignore. Her old company's flagship product, built on a mess of outdated libraries and brute force integrations, suddenly looked like a rotary phone in a room full of iPhones. Sales calls were going unanswered. Clients were asking pointed questions. One of their mid-tier customers tweeted, "Why are we paying more for half the features and 10 times the bugs?" Internal meetings became emergency huddles. Project managers were rechecking timelines. QA leads were running performance tests that confirmed what Claire already knew. They were slow, fat, inelegant, and the world had just seen the difference. She watched it all unravel from her desk, expression neutral, eyes flicking across emails full of action required and platform parity sprint urgent. No one said it out loud, but the scent of panic was thick in the air. In the next all-hands, CTO's jaw was clenched so tight he looked like he was trying to crush his molars into diamonds. "We need answers," he said. "How did they move so fast?" Claire could have told him. They moved fast because they didn't spend months burying good ideas under red tape and mediocre men. Because while he was busy protecting Tyler's ego and cutting budgets for infrastructure improvements, someone else was out there building quietly. Purposefully. Someone who wasn't playing politics. Someone who knew what real innovation looked like and didn't need his permission to make it real. She sat in that meeting and scrawled fake notes in her pad, underlined phrases like agility targets and backlog review while biting the inside of her cheek to keep from smiling. It was working. Not just the code, but the plan. They still didn't know who was behind the curtain. And Claire was enjoying the show. Memo dropped like a passive-aggressive bomb, subject line. Reminder, IP compliance obligations. No names, no direct accusations. Just a sea of corporate vagueness soaked in veiled threats. Claire read it over her cereal, watching a soggy Cheerio spin like a slow death spiral. The email was pure legalese theater. Phrases like retrospective audits, review of development artifacts, and unauthorized transfer of internal concepts was the kind of language meant to sound neutral, but still make your pulse spike. She didn't blink, because she knew exactly what it meant. They'd finally started connecting dots. The sudden market drop, the client churn, the mysterious platform from a rival company that looked eerily like something they should have built. Someone upstairs had gone from confused to suspicious. The CTO had probably screamed red into a boardroom phone, and now legal was on the scent. Leash tugged tight. Claire smirked and refreshed her inbox. By noon, it arrived. From Legal Department at Corpcom subject. Request for review of source material former employee agreement enforcement. It was as predictable as a Tyler pitch deck. The letter asked for access to any development artifacts or intellectual property created during your tenure, which may overlap with recently launched competitor systems, wanted her to voluntarily provide proof she hadn't stolen from them. Claire leaned back in her chair, cracked her knuckles, and exhaled through her nose like a boxer stepping into round one, not because she was nervous, but because the match was already fixed. She pulled open her archive, a fortress of digital receipts so detailed it might as well have been a federal evidence locker. Every weekend commit, every Git push from her home IP, every session logged from her personal machine. No office VPN, no timestamps during work hours. Screenshots of her building the architecture long before Tyler's stolen slide deck ever existed. Even her IDE logs, down to the minute. She bundled it all up into a ZIP file named Proof of Independent Development zip and attached a short, surgically calm reply. Per your request, please find attached all relevant documentation regarding my independently developed framework. As you'll see, all work was conducted outside of company hours, using personal equipment and network access. Additionally, no components, libraries, or proprietary assets from Corp systems were utilized in any stage of development. Please confirm receipt. Best, see Martin. She hit send. No emotion, no nerves, just that quiet, delicious click of a sent message that she knew would land like a brick through their glass house. Somewhere, legal would open that ZIP and realize they'd stepped on a rake, handle up, face first. Because Claire didn't just cover her tracks. She left breadcrumbs, time-stamped, verified, backed up twice and notarized via her lawyer's escrow service. The licensing agreement with Andrew's firm, filed under an airtight LLC. Her name, nowhere in the code comments, nowhere on the documents. She was a ghost with receipts. By 4 p.m., there was radio silence, no reply, no follow-up, just a lot of Slack activity and a canceled meeting on her team calendar mysteriously titled Postmortem. Claire logged off early that day, made herself a drink, opened her window to let the evening air in, and leaned back with the calm of someone watching their enemy drown in paperwork and consequences. They thought she was just a dev with good ideas, forgot she was also the architect of every escape hatch. The board meeting was supposed to be routine, quarterly projections, investor appeasement, some smoke blown about future-proofing. Instead, it turned into a slow-motion execution. And the CTO was the one with the blindfold on. Claire didn't attend, of course. She wasn't invited, but she knew everything that went down. Because someone in that room, someone with more brains than loyalty, forwarded her the audio recording. It started with the CTO's voice, brittle and cracking under the weight of desperation. We have reason to believe that elements of our back-end strategy have been appropriated by a former employee and licensed illegally to a competitor, he said, like a man trying to build a raft out of damp paperwork. He dropped her name, dropped it like a threat. What he didn't know, what no one on that board realized yet, was that Claire had already anticipated this exact tantrum. Her legal team had drafted response protocols before she even signed the license. Andrew's company had done a full due diligence sweep and declared her framework clean as a surgical table. And the benchmark tests? Oh, those hurt. Her architecture was beating their flagship platform by miles. Faster load times, smoother scaling under stress, nearly zero downtime. Clients had started whispering, asking, then requesting demos. Then came the twist no one expected. Mid-meeting, the board secretary's phone buzzed. She paused the CTO's rant to check it, nodded once, and whispered something to the CEO. His face dropped. A new email hit everyone's inbox at once. Subject line, Service Termination Notice Platform Migration. Sender, their biggest enterprise client. Claire had heard rumors they were shopping around, even helped customize a few modules for their specific compliance needs. Under NDA, of course, faceless, anonymous, billed through her LLC. Now it was official. The client was leaving, moving everything to the rival firm, taking 7 figures of annual revenue with them. The boardroom turned into a morgue. The CTO tried to recover, sputtering legalese and half-baked theories. She must have reverse-engineered it using internal documentation. Someone gave her access, and that's when someone on the board cut him off. Cold, we've reviewed the documentation. She didn't need us. She built something better, alone. Another voice chimed in, and she protected it better than we protect anything. It was done. Claire sat at her kitchen table that evening, sipping a glass of dry red and listening to the recording on loop. Not because she needed to hear it, but because it felt like justice in surround sound. No more hiding, no more strategic silence. She posted a subtle update to her LinkedIn that night, excited to continue building tools that actually work. Nothing more, no gloating, no flames, because she didn't need to throw punches. The scoreboard spoke for itself. The product that bore her soul, line by line, sleepless night by sleepless night, was now the industry benchmark. And the fools who tried to bury her under legal threats and office politics were too busy reading exit clauses to fight anymore. The call came in on a Thursday, late afternoon. Claire was on her second cup of matcha, halfway through rewriting a module for containerized event queues when her phone buzzed with a number she hadn't saved, but knew by heart. She let it ring twice before answering. Claire speaking. The pause on the other end was long enough to make her smile. Then, the voice, smoothed out, performative, desperate under the varnish of faux diplomacy. Claire, it's Marcus. I was hoping we could talk licensing. Ah, the CEO, the same Marcus who once waved her off in a product meeting like she was noise. The same Marcus who called her too narrowly focused in her last performance review, as if mastery was a flaw. She didn't answer right away. Let him stew in his own anxiety. Then, calm as moonlight, she replied, "You had your chance." He jumped in too fast. No, there were misunderstandings, but this market shift, it caught us all off guard, and no, she interrupted. You had your chance. Twice, her voice didn't raise, didn't crack, just two syllables laced with finality. You stole the idea. You buried the work. You let children run the system and watched it drown. Claire, this isn't personal, she hung up. Let the silence click like a gavel. She didn't slam the phone or throw it dramatically. She set it down, sipped her matcha, reopened her IDE. There were cleaner things to build, better systems to design, because the real beauty, she wasn't alone anymore. Andrew's company had brought her in, officially, finally, not just as a consultant or a faceless ghost behind the code. Her title, Chief Systems Architect. Her compensation, more than triple her old salary, plus a cut of revenue tied directly to the platform she birthed from caffeine and spite. New team treated her with reverence, not because she demanded it, but because they knew. She'd taken them to the top of the market in under 6 months. Their product was lean, clean, and uncatchable. Competitors were trying to reverse engineer the black box, but it wasn't a box. It was her. Meanwhile, her old employer circled the drain. The valuation dropped 17% in the first week after the client exodus, then 32%. Analysts smelled blood. Investors fled like rats from a burning Tesla. Reddit threads popped up titled, "How did Corp miss the shift?" with Claire's framework dissected line by line in GitHub whispers. They tried to pivot, but every door they reached for was locked. The innovation they ignored had lapped them. The systems they thought were good enough were now historical artifacts. Claire kept her head down, mostly. She refused interviews, declined podcasts, let her work speak louder than any post-mortem could. But one thing lingered. The bridge they burned? She didn't just let it smolder, she detonated it, with precision, with documentation, with elegance. And when the dust cleared, only one thing remained standing. Her. Turns out, the only thing they really owned was their arrogance. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.